Hello everyone and welcome to A Good Kind of Scary. This is your host, Saoirse Rafferty, and today I'm going to be talking about the topic, taking yourself out on a date. Today we're going to talk a bit about the benefits of romanticizing your own life instead of waiting for a romantic partner to do so. We're going to talk about how you can get more comfortable going on dates with yourself. And I'll also chat a bit about how you can get comfortable, asking other people on dates, going to group settings on your own when you don't know anyone, trying new things alone, and not just waiting around for other people to do things with you. We're going to talk about the whole idea of being independent and how oftentimes this can feel scary. But I'll also look at how there are good things about doing things alone, but also how it can be, you should be wary for hyper independence, because sometimes we become too self-reliant and then we don't reach out for help, or, we don't get that human connection that we need. But I want to also talk about how it can be healthy to have time alone, do things on our own, and how there's completely nothing wrong with enjoying your own company. In fact, I think it can be a blessing. So that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today, as well as touching on my own experience. I am single, so I very much take time out to try new things, to bring myself on dates with myself as well as other people, but also, to meet new people, travel to new places, and I have spent a lot of time on my own, but it hasn't always been that way. So I want to talk a bit about that in terms of my own life experience. And I also did some polls on Instagram the other day, asking listeners of the podcast and people who follow me at A Good Kind of Scary about their experiences in doing things alone and how comfortable they feel when they do certain things alone and what things they would rather not do on their own. So I'm going to get into some of those poll results as well. For now, I wanted to start the podcast with this whole idea that we will bring dogs out for a walk, or we also might meet our friends for a walk, but we won't always bring ourselves out for a walk. I thought about this recently when I was dog sitting a friend's dog, how it gave me a lot more motivation to go for walks in the morning because I knew I needed to bring this dog for a walk. I will easily take this dog for a walk and I will make sure this dog gets food and water, and I'll look after this dog the same as if I was looking after a baby. But I don't always look after myself with that same amount of discipline, routine, and structure and care and nourishment. And I definitely have started to more, or I've become more aware of this in the last few years. And I do actively take time out now, but I don't always get it right. And I'm not as consistent as what I would be if I was looking after an animal or another human. So it made me think, well, why is it that, we will make time sometimes for other people in our life, whether it's family members, partners, loved ones, children, animals, pets, but we might not make time for ourselves, and actually just taking a moment to ask ourselves, what do I need right now? So before we go any further into the podcast, I'd like for you to do that, to actually take a moment to ask yourself, what is it that I need right now? Okay, and like what I'll always say in any workshop when I ask people that question is to notice what comes up without trying to change it, and to just be curious about whatever does come up for you. What is the thing or the things that were coming up to the surface when you thought, what do I need right now? Maybe you were like, I don't know what I need. And even that in itself, if you wrote that down in a journal and just allowed yourself to be curious about that immediate reaction of, I don't know what I need. Because sometimes we can delve a bit deeper, and that might show where we're lacking taking time out for ourselves to take care of ourselves. So like delving a bit more into this topic before I start to look deep into it, I want to read out a passage from Florence Given's book. It's called Women Living Deliciously. And a main theme in this book is all about romanticizing your life, all about like finding joy in the little things and appreciating so much in the little everyday things. And I must say that since I've been reading this book, it's really nice to be reading a book and feeling like I know a lot of what she's talking about already. If I read this a year ago, I might have been like, whoa, a lot of this stuff is new to me. But it's actually a really lovely, comforting feeling of like, oh yeah, me too, I do this. And I suppose it's made me realise, you know, how much I do practice gratitude in my life without even intentionally writing down I am grateful on a piece of paper each day. It's made me realise how, you know, me just taking time to notice the sun in the sky and just having a moment of stillness and quiet to myself, even as I sip my coffee in the morning, that these are moments of appreciation, little gaps of joy, as she likes to call them. So I'm going to read out a passage from her book. Romancing ourselves is not something we pick up when our self-esteem takes a hit. It should become a devotional practice and commitment we make to ourselves, which reminds us that we always have the power to do something small to make our lives worth living. A very capitalist idea of romance has been force-fed to us. Red roses, champagne, dinner at the swanky restaurant, a new outfit to get our date to fancy us. Yet we can do all of these things, go out with the right person, and still we feel something is missing. Perhaps it's not that there is anything wrong with us or the person we're with, but that we're both engaging in an empty, shallow, one-size-fits-all version of romance that doesn't suit us. Just as the roles we habitually perform in our lives can exhaust us when they're ill-fitting and inauthentic, so too can an outdated version of being swept off our feet. It can leave us feeling hollow. The amount of pressure we culturally place on romantic love to fulfill our lives is also to blame. We think falling in love will be the solution to all our problems, but it isn't, and we are left feeling desperate when it doesn't fix us. What I have come to learn is that romance is only truly effective when it is integrated and baked into our lives, when it is informed by what brings us joy, instead of what others collectively deem to be romantic. Choosing to walk on the sunny side of the street, putting an album on to fill our home with delicious euphoric sounds, sitting on the top of the bus with a fucking incredible playlist as it rains and watching the neon lights blur through the raindrops on the window. There is a refreshing aftertaste of agency and confidence from having created a moment all for ourselves instead of buying off-the-shelf romance. Okay, so that is from Florence Given's book, Women Living Deliciously. And, you know, I think it's relatable and suitable for all of us. Like, she talks about this idea of like romance being sold as like a commodity, you know, and we see this with joy and happiness and friendship and love, all like on social media being shared as if it's something just to like and to give our opinion on or to buy. And, you know, it's like we're all going around judging ourselves, but the real joy is in how we actually appreciate a moment that we're in and how we take time to notice things. And that gets me into today's podcast, which is all about taking yourself out on a date. So for starters, I guess, how are you going to know what you like on dates unless you go on more of them? So I guess first of all, of course, it's good to go on dates with other people. because you get real practice and real learning for actual, romantic dating from involving other people. But I think before you do that, it's also important, or even as you do that, to take time out, whether you're in a relationship or single, to bring yourself on dates. And when I say bring yourself on dates, it could be, going to the cinema on your own, but it could also be just going for a walk on the beach. It could also be taking time to yourself to watch a movie at home. Like, that's a date with yourself, doing something that you love. It could be having tea to yourself in the morning, because that's your quiet alone time that you get. So taking yourself out on a date, it's doing the things that bring you joy and taking a gap of time to actually connect with yourself. It's so beautiful when we can share things that we love doing with the people we love. But there's also something really romantic and intimate about like keeping some things for ourselves and doing some things on our own. We don't have to live this life on our own. It's important to have other people around us. But I also think it's really important to actually get to know ourselves. And we get to know ourselves. I'm going to give a few tips that I've written down now. By number one, starting small. And some example that I have is spending time every day for 5 minutes just sitting in silence with yourself. This might sound really silly and you might think 5 minutes, sure, that's nothing. Exactly. Spend 5 minutes every day sitting in silence. No distraction, no phone, and watch how you will reach for distractions, how you might look for distractions, and just sit. And your job is to sit and notice how you want to be distracted from your own company, from your own thoughts and emotions. And your job is to sit there and breathe and maybe pay attention to the sunset. Maybe, just sit and notice, God, my mind does wander. Maybe you sit and you realise you haven't noticed your breath in a while. Maybe you sit and you feel something in your body that you haven't felt. Maybe you realise your back is actually sore and calling out for attention. I challenge you to sit with yourself for 5 minutes, even just for one day tomorrow, and notice. Put a 5-minute timer on. No matter what your thoughts tell you, like, oh, I should do this now in case I forget, allow the thoughts to go. They're trying to keep you safe. This is practicing meditation, and this is what meditation is. But this is also practicing being able to sit with yourself and noticing how that feels. Because if you feel uncomfortable sitting on your own, in your own company, think of why you then feel uncomfortable when you go into environments with other people, because you're bringing that with you. And if you're in unfamiliar settings, that noise and those feelings are going to feel a lot scarier. Whereas when you take time to sit with yourself, then you'll realise, oh, okay, this is normal. I'm feeling this when I'm sitting at home in my room. If we go out to sit in a restaurant on our own and we start to feel a bit panicky, and like, oh, everyone's looking at me, even though, trust me, they're not. Nobody cares. That's because we also are sitting with feelings and thoughts that we're not used to. So start small. Get used to spending time on your own. And then my next point is to just do it. What I like to remind myself if I'm having, like, I went on a date recently, I was just like, Saoirse, it'll be over in like an hour or two, or, a few hours, or whenever it is. But by tomorrow, I'll know how it went. So I could feel my body panicking. But no matter what, it's reminding yourself. I also reminded myself, you've done this before. These are it's a good kind of scary. These are healthy nerves. So whether it's going on a date with another person or whether it's going to sit in a restaurant on your own, because for me, I don't find that as scary now. There are times, daunting, I suppose is the word, or nerve-wracking. There was recently I went for dinner on my own, and it was on a Saturday night, and I was in a town, I was in Fermanagh, and I'd never actually been there before. So I love that feeling when I go to a new place, because, you know, it's like I don't know anyone, so it feels a lot more comfortable going for dinner. I like went to an Indian restaurant, I had an all-you-can-eat buffet. And I was sitting on my own, and I did notice there was a lot of tables with couples, with families. You know, when I went in, they were like, oh, is it just a table for one? And I was like, yeah. And you do have that feeling of like, oh, is it strange that I'm here on my own? But then I was like, no, Saoirse, like in ways, you know, when you look at other people who are in families or couples or friends, you can easily think, oh, that's really nice. But they might also be looking at you and thinking, oh, that's so nice that they can just come here on their own and they have the time to do that. And that's something that I always remind myself, like, is that I am so lucky and blessed right now to have the time to do that. You know, when I get in this mindset of like, and not to say I have loads of free time, but I just mean like now is the time to do this, to bring myself out on dates, because I imagine like, you know, sometimes life can get even more busier. And, you know, when we are, especially in a romantic relationship, like at the moment, I already find it sometimes difficult to meet up with different friends and family members. Never mind if I also had a romantic partner. But I suppose the idea is that you want to be with someone, they just kind of easily slot into your life in a way, and they'll, you know, go to different things with you. But I think I've also learned to value my own alone time a lot and my own space a lot, that sometimes I do have times where I'm like, oh, it would be nice to, you know, to have a romantic partner. But then I have other times where, like what I said, it's like, well, enjoy this part of your life now. I have different friends who are engaged. Two of my close friends this year have got engaged, and other people I know as well. It's so easy to think, whoa, that's not anywhere where my life is at right now. And it's so easy to reflect on your own life when you see other people's, especially your friends who are the same age as you. It always reflects something back at yourself, but it's a reminder that like you see their life a certain way, and then they might also be looking at you and thinking, well, isn't it great that she's doing this? No matter what, it's that whole thing of the grass is always greener. Getting back to like taking yourself out on dates, whether you're in a relationship or not. I know I was very much there making it sound like I'm mostly speaking on behalf of single people. But no matter what the thing is, it might be like going to a group meetup. It could be trying a new sport, joining a new gym. Just reminding yourself it'll be over in an hour or like 20 minutes, and then it won't matter. Reminding yourself it'd be silly not to if there's going to be a potential long-term payoff. So something that I like to think about is like, okay, is the short-term discomfort as painful as the long-term regret of never trying? And you'd rather feel that short-term intense discomfort of trying something new and being a beginner and having the risk of failing or rejection or whatever it is. You'd rather feel that for like a few minutes than to be sitting for weeks thinking, oh, why didn't I do that? Oh, I wish I'd do that. Like, always think about the long-term payoff and just do it, because if you don't do it, you'll never know. I suppose if you are looking to bring yourself out on dates in public with yourself, I suggest bringing a book, a notebook or a laptop with you. Whenever I went to that all-you-can-eat, I did have a book with me, but then I was like, you know what? No, I'm just going to sit and enjoy my food. I people watch. I had a view over a river, so that was really lovely. So I was able to just look out at the view and sit with myself, and that was a lovely feeling. But there have been other times, you know, where I feel it's nice to have a book or to be doing work, and this is a way to kind of get used to maybe being in public on your own. or sitting in public spaces could be like going to coffee shops and doing, some work there. And in a way, it's like you're getting work done, or you might want to take up a hobby like reading and deciding like, right, I'm going to read when I go to a coffee shop. You're maybe like, in one way, you're getting the reward of treating yourself to a coffee, or whatever it is that you like. And that's your reward. And then you're also getting used to being in a public space on your own. And you're also, doing something that you want to do, like reading, or your work. So it's kind of just seeing ways that you can maybe tie in like a reward with the uncomfortable task, or you can also make it exciting by going to a place you'd like to go to. I suppose another tip that I have is not to wait around for people. The thing is, sometimes if you're always waiting around for people to come with you, like, oh, someday I'll go because my friend said she'd also like to come. I remember like back when I was 17, I remember looking at like Creamfields and thinking like, oh, I really want to go to like an EDM music festival. And I'd always be on to my friends about it, and they'd be like, yeah, that'd be cool. But like, no one ever was as eager as I was to go. So it just didn't happen. And I guess in the last few years, I've nearly just pushed myself to do things. I have went to festivals with friends since then, but like, my attitude used to always be like, oh, I'll wait and see what my friends will do, or will they come with me, and if they say no, then I can't go, that sort of way. Whereas now I'm much more like, if my friends want to come, it's great. But if they're not sure, I'm going to go anyway. Because if it's something that I want to do, I'm not going to wait around and have, once again, the long-term regret of not going just because of the short-term discomfort of doing something on my own. Something else I suppose that I've learned is that I really love doing things alone. I love going to new places alone, and I like trying new things alone. I said like love, and that is a strong word to say for all of those things, because as I said, sometimes it is nice having people with you. But I guess the thing that I love is trying new things and having new experiences, and that feeling sometimes when you go somewhere new and you don't know what's going to happen. And I think other people are maybe scared of that. I probably have been in the past, and I sometimes still can be, but I call it a good kind of scary, because it's always opening room for growth and new experiences and learning something new about yourself. When you step out of your comfort zone into the unknown, you're always going to learn something new. So a big life-changing experience for me was when I went to California for the first time on my own when I was 20. It was my first solo trip. I guess I say trip, but I was living abroad studying at UC Irvine for 6 months. And I was absolutely terrified. I talk about this in the first episode of this podcast. For me, it was that mixture of nerves, but also excitement. And it very much was a good kind of scary. But it came with its challenges, because I was in a long-term relationship at that time. Like, I think we'd been together for a year. Before that relationship, I was in another relationship for a few years. I was very much used to being in a relationship, and on top of that, I had come from a very social bubble of friends in college. And I guess as well as that, on the weekends, I'd always go back to being around my family in my own familiar space. So I was heading off abroad, not knowing anyone, heading to California. Honestly, it was really scary at the start, and something I always have this memory of, like, I remember when I got there, it was January, and like, I remember just getting so annoyed. There was this big supermarket near our student accommodation, and I noticed for every like big holiday that was coming up or any event, they would just go all out. Everything was extra commercialized. And like, I remember even coming up to Valentine's Day, there was just Like, you can just imagine, just watch the movie Valentine's Day. I shouldn't even have to explain, but it was extra. The same as it is. It's like that in Ireland and places, but where I was, it was nearly, probably 20 times that. And I remember even for the Super Bowl, the shops, it was just more food, more excuses to spend money. And I think I started to become more aware of this. And I was also kind of seeing how ridiculous all of it was, despite feeling that it was silly to commercialize all these events. I remember feeling a sense of sadness for my first month or two, because I was seeing lots of couples when I'd go to the supermarket, or whenever I would just be walking around college, I'd see different couples holding hands, laughing, and I just remember feeling this real sense of sadness and aloneness. I suppose now looking back, it's so strange because now I suppose I'd see couples now, and sometimes you might still get that feeling of oh, it would be really nice to have that. But I'd often think more oh, it's so lovely to see people together, laughing, smiling. I think it's kind of sad that I didn't feel comfortable on my own, that I was noticing everywhere couples and feeling as if I was the odd one out and I was the only person in the world. I guess in ways maybe it was me insecure in myself and my relationship that I felt that way. It just showed in a way how attached I had become too, that I was nearly not used to going to the supermarket on my own doing a shop, which is something that I've literally spent so much time doing in the last 6 or 7 years of my life. It's just the norm for me to do these things on my own. But I think there was a few years there where I was used to maybe being around people and doing lots of things with a partner. Anyway, I guess those 6 months were a blessing because it really forced me to sit with myself, like what I spoke about at the start of this podcast. But it also pushed me, to meet new people, to make friends who were from different nationalities, different cultures, and people with different interests. I suppose it forced me to really reflect on what I wanted and to notice what I gravitated towards when there was nobody else around me. Because I think some of us, we latch on to partners or we latch on to friends or family members and we let them make all the decisions for us, which kind of strips us of our own freedom and independence to actually make decisions for ourselves, to realize what it is we want. And it's so easy to lose ourselves in social bubbles or in another person, and to kind of lose sense of our own voice and our own feelings. And at the end of the day, we are the one person that we spend our entire life with. I think the most important thing we can do is to take care of ourselves, because, there will be times where, other people won't be looking out for you, or they won't, have the energy to always take care of you. So you do have to learn how to take care of yourself, to know what you need and what brings joy to your life. Just like that passage I read out by Florence Given, what are the little things that bring you joy? And if you can't answer that, you might think, oh, well, I don't know, I'm just not a joyful person, or I don't like to do much. Well, maybe that's because you haven't done much, not because you don't like to do it. Maybe it's because you're not giving yourself the freedom to try to do different things and to actually notice how you feel when you're not just in a comfortable bubble. Another idea is that we often wait until we are going on dates with, a romantic partner to actually do ourselves up, put makeup on, to, dress ourselves up to look well. Whether you're a guy or a girl or whoever, we feel it's we put on either our best performance, we put a lot of effort into how we look and how we come across. But it's imagine if we put that same effort and energy into like our everyday feelings about life, how we actually feel in ourselves. I'm not trying to say that every day we should be trying to make ourselves look great, but it is lovely to kind of put some effort into dressing up for yourself, into experimenting with your looks. Like this summer, I dyed my hair red. I was looking in the mirror before I decided to do that a few weeks beforehand, and I was literally like, no, I can't do this. Like, people would think I'm ridiculous. There you go. I was literally believing that I couldn't change my hair colour because of what people would think. And I completely made up that people would think it would look ridiculous. We all tell ourselves these stories about why we can and can't do things. A lot of it is just based off of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection. As humans, we do fear being rejected. Once again, is the short-term discomfort, is that going to be worse than the long-term regret? And for me, I was looking at the way the seasons change and the leaves fall off the trees, and I just thought, you know what? The leaves change colours, they die, they wither away, and then spring comes and, you know, all the flowers and the trees, they're all blooming again. And I was like, well, our hair, we can change its style, we can change its colour. Ourselves too, we can mix things up, we can try new things, we can be artistic with our makeup. Outside of appearances, we can try new foods, we can play new music. And like, these are little ways that I try to make my life exciting and feel more romantic. It's like I go for sea swims down by the sea, and I'll maybe stop by a nice coffee shop and bring my notebook with me and do some journaling or drawing. And to me, that's like taking myself out on a date, because rather than sitting around waiting for the perfect partner to come along to take me out on a date, rather than like always feeling like I need to go out on dates with randomers on dating apps to go to coffee shops or go for swims. Like, those are things that I love doing. Why am I waiting around for people I don't know, who I might not enjoy as much? Why am I waiting around for other people to do the things that could bring so much joy into my life? So like a few years ago, I would have been terrified to go swim in the sea on my own, and not because of swimming. Like, I'm a fairly strong swimmer, I believe, but it's because of the fear of that I would look silly. Nobody cares, honestly. If anything, the only time people have showed care or concern is honestly just about me drowning. And they're like, make sure you stay in. Are you okay? I have the loveliest interactions when I go for swims or I go to the seaside saunas on my own too. I meet people, I chat with new people who I've never met. I've had people, like, there's a group who go every morning not far from my house. And a lot of them would probably be in like their 60s, 70s, and they invited me to come down with them any morning I like. And so sometimes I'll pop down and join them and swim with them too and chat with them. So it's really, there's a lovely like social element too of like, if you open yourself up to doing new things, you might think, oh Jesus, I don't want to be talking to people. You don't have to talk to people, but like, people aren't going to think you're weird. Like, you know, if anything, I've had people be like, geez, aren't you great doing this? Or, you know, going off on your own and like sitting in a coffee shop on your own. People are focused on themselves and their own conversations. They don't really care about what you're doing. It's about you caring about what you're doing. And, you know, you get comfortable the more you do these things. I don't even think anymore when I'm going sitting alone in coffee shops, doing some work or writing, or when I'm going on a walk on my own, or when I'm swimming in the sea. I don't really think much into these things because I've just gotten so used to doing them now. I suppose I am a sensitive person. I would feel that I am empathetic, I am sensitive, and I sometimes think a lot. I've now in the last year or two given myself space to like not always be socializing, because I noticed I get a bit overwhelmed if I'm always meeting up with people, and I need a lot of downtime to kind of process what I'm feeling. I suppose just to maintain energy and to re-energize myself. I need time like to myself to like do little things that'll bring me back to life. And sometimes like that's why waiting around for people to come with you to do these things can feel like unhelpful if you're someone who can get really drained from being around a lot of people all the time. That's why I also like doing things alone, because I can meet new people and chat with people without feeling like I'm with them for like a few hours in the day. There are other times I absolutely love spending hours with people, and I love like some one-to-one meetups and chats with people, and I'm like a social butterfly. But then that needs to be balanced out with alone time, doing things on my own and going on solo adventures. And like, I realised I do like solo travelling. I like the idea of going somewhere new, strolling around, and people don't know you, and you don't know, once again, who you're going to meet, what you're going to learn about yourself. And there's just a nice freedom in getting to decide what you want to do with your day. I just want to read out some of the poll results from my Instagram. So I put up different polls asking people like how they felt in different places, like alone, would they do certain things on their own. So I'm going to read out what different people said, some of the messages I got in. So I had 96% of people said that they do sit in cafes alone, and then 4% of people said they wouldn't do that by choice. I guess the first thing to mention is that it's very likely that like a lot of the people who follow me on Instagram could be people who already are stepping outside their comfort zone, taking risks, like wanting to do more things on their own that scares them, or try new things, and are very open-minded to different ways of living. So of course it's not giving a full representation of like everyone in Ireland or the world. But I guess it is good to consider, like, as I read these out, where would you fall in these categories? So I also had 65% of people said that they solo travel regularly. 15%, so 1/5, said that they want to solo travel but they're scared. And then 20% of people said that they would rather go with people they know on trips. I suppose that was also an interesting one, because there was like 15% said that they are scared of solo travelling on their own. 20% were saying they'd rather not do it. So that's 35% who, it's something that they're apprehensive about for different reasons. And I guess I'm looking at the ones who said that they want to do it but they're scared. And for people who want to do something but they're scared, like that, you're sitting on the fence, and this could be you if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking like, oh, that would be great, but I'm not that type of person. Like, you can be that type of person. Listen to my podcast with Orla Braden. We like bonded so much with this in our conversation that we had this summer. And this whole idea that we both used to maybe tell ourselves, oh, we're not that type of person. Today, I went rock climbing with a group. I went to, it's called Soul Stuff Adventures. It's great. It's run by my friend Sarah Casey. She organises different group outings. I've done hikes with them, and today I did rock climbing. So I say my friend Sarah Casey, I only met her a few months ago, and once again it was through stepping outside my comfort zone and trying new things. So at first I started to do new things on my own, like what I said, maybe going to a coffee shop on my own, spending time sitting with myself. Then the next big steps were like solo traveling, which I did a lot of last year and the year before, and you'll know that from listening to my podcast. And then the next thing that I did while I was solo traveling was actually going to social meetups on my own. And I found that a lot more daunting. And the same as when I came back to Ireland this year, joining different communities on my own, or going on dates with people, is a lot scarier for me than actually doing new things on my own. So I'd, happily could post podcasts from the comfort of my room. But like, that's very different to speaking in front of a room of people, which I pushed myself to do a month ago. I did Shanachíhe in Limerick, and I just signed up for it the day before. I showed up, And I did it. And my heart was pounding. A big fear of mine has always been public speaking. But I am someone who can sit here on a microphone now and tell you that I've had a massive fear of public speaking, and I've also always, for whatever reason, had a mental block with rock climbing. I don't know, I just have this memory of being a teenager and we went to the Delphi outdoor centre, and I had so much fun with my friends, like jumping around in the mud, and we all really bonded that weekend, which just shows the power of like being out in nature and having people doing random tasks together. Like our whole year at school, transition year, I bonded with girls I'd been in school with for 3 years, sitting in a class, and we'd never really bonded, and all of a sudden we go away for a few days and it's like we're all seeing each other in a different way, yet we sat in like a classroom together for years, which is mad when you think about it. It just shows like the power of nature and learning in other ways outside of a classroom. So today I went rock climbing, and very much I noticed like that my feeling, like the adrenaline rush come up as I was like grabbing, it was outdoor rock climbing, and like grabbing rocks and looking down, and I didn't actually look down that much, but I just had this voice of like, oh, I can't do this. And I noticed it, and I was able to be like, I can. And it's how learning to sit with myself has helped me change my internal dialogue. So if you do those 5 minutes of sitting with yourself each day, I'm not saying that it has to, stay as 5 minutes forever. You can eventually extend it. You might decide you'll do 5 minutes of journaling a day, but 5 minutes of sitting with yourself for a day, getting used to meditating, you will start to notice and become more aware of the way you speak to yourself. And that's when you can start saying, no, that's actually not true. Because we can get very weighed down by our thoughts and think just because our thoughts are telling us like, you can't go to a coffee shop on your own, you can't solo travel, you're not that person, you can't rock climb, you can't speak in front of an audience. Like, just because they're telling you that, you know what you're going to do? You're going to go and prove it wrong, and you're going to say, no, I can do that. And then that's going to be your motivation. You're going to go and do it. And today I went to a group outing. I knew Sarah, who was running it. I didn't know anyone else there. So once again, actually I knew one other person there who I met on a hiking trip. But once again, it was me putting myself in a new situation, but doing something that I'd always wanted to go back and try more of because I had a mental block and was scared of doing it as a teen. And I really enjoyed it. And I even felt more proud of myself afterwards because I knew how difficult that was for me as a teenager. And a lot of it was probably the social anxiety of people watching me or, being scared to fall. So it's funny now, and it's not because of the years that have passed by, but it's actually because of just rewiring the way that I think about these things and pausing and taking deep breaths and saying like, I can do this. So the same with you, with like learning to take yourself out on dates, learning to go to group meetups. It's reminding yourself, I can. Learning to solo travel. You can do it. And you know what? And I said this today when I was going up the wall. One of the lads was laughing at me. I don't know, did they ask me like, oh sure, like how are you going to get up, or what way are you going to go up, or ask me about coming back down, and I just said, sure, look, I'll just go up there and we'll see what happens then. And they were all laughing because it was like, I won't worry about that till I'm up there. And I've started approaching life more in this way and my spontaneous side, and it actually works better for me. I've realised I can only think my way and plan my way and think my way out of so many things and plan so much. You actually just have to give things a go, and then you learn along the way. And it's like that. Traveling is very much like that. You just show up and that's it. There's no expectations. I think people panic and they think, oh, I need to see this, I need to do that, I need to be having fun and posting Instagram stories 24/7. I should be out, I should be happy all the time. You don't have to do shit. Traveling's great because you actually realise like you don't have to do the standard thing that everyone does. You don't know who you meet until you go. So you can only actually plan so much, and things going wrong is all a part of the adventures and the stories. So just do it if you're thinking about it. Okay, I want to read out some of the other poll results. So 96% of people said that they had eaten in a restaurant alone, and 4% said that they would never do that by choice. So small percentage for, but like I said, these polls, it's just a small population too taking part in it. And 75% of people said that they actively try new things alone. 21% of people, and this is on my Instagram page, they said they don't actively try new things alone. And 4% said they try new things in private. So examples of trying new things in private, like for me, it would be like learning the guitar. I, would do my podcast, even though it is more of a public thing, I guess, even though it's online, it's still public, I guess. But private things could be like, me learning the guitar, doing Duolingo and practicing Irish, reading new books. It could be doing yoga in your home and taking on a new sport. If you don't really care so much about needing to be in private, you might, go for a run by the sea and not think as much about what people think when they see me. Which is a thing, like that sometimes crosses my mind, but I think it crosses a lot of our minds, It's like I'd be out running, you'd see cars and people going, and I honestly, I don't really run at all anymore. I mostly like walk or hike, or I sometimes run on the treadmill at the gym, but it's something that I don't do so much. But whenever I have done it, I'd notice I'd be a bit like, oh God, you get a bit self-conscious with the cars driving past. And once again, that's learning to be comfortable doing that and realising people don't actually care. Like I'd think fair play when I see people running on their own on the road. Okay, 63% of people say they have been to the cinema alone, and 37% said they've never been to the cinema alone. This was an interesting one. So recently I was talking with a friend and I was telling her like, oh yeah, I love going to the cinema on my own. And she was like, what? You go to the cinema on your own? She's like, I didn't know people did that. She said that. And I thought that was such an interesting thing, like that she said, I didn't know people did that. Because sometimes once we hear that other people do it, we're like, okay, then it must be normal. Then I'll start doing it. But it's like, it's funny because I go to the cinema on my own. I've went a few times this year. I'll often go more often in like bigger cities. So I'd go when I go into like Galway or Limerick, rather than go to like, the local small town one in Clare. And I think it's just because there's like, once again, it's that feeling of like, oh, I'm not going to run into people. And it's just nice. I don't know, I'll do it as well if I'm maybe in a new city, or, there might have been times where I've been on holidays and I'll be like, oh, well, I just go to the cinema. And I might spontaneously, I just get moods if I'm like, decide to go into a town for a day, because I get really drained from shopping. But I also just love, there's like watching movies, sitting in a cinema and just feeling like alone with the big screen. Not that I feel alone, but like absorbed into a movie. There's like a nice feeling of aloneness, and it's like just you and the film. Because like, you can bring people to the cinema, but you're not really going to be connecting with them or talking with them. Like, you're there to watch the movie, and there's nothing that annoys me more than someone talking over the movie, unless we're there at like a comedy and we're laughing. But like, what I've noticed is that I'll always see different people on their own in the cinema. So it is something that quite a lot of people, not a lot, but there's quite a few people who do it. And yeah, I guess for me, it's something that I've done more of in the last few years. I remember when my brother was unwell and in hospital in Dublin after one of his big surgeries, and it was one of the Fantastic Beast movies. And I just felt like it was like a nice escape. And then I remember going another time when my brother was unwell, and it's the only time I remember actually leaving the cinema. Because I was sitting there watching this movie, and all of a sudden, it's like it was probably my first time being away from what was going on with my brother, or like, I don't know, just either way, I was in the cinema and all of a sudden all of the feelings of like grief and pain started to come up, and I had to leave. This was before my brother passed away, but I knew he was dying. So I think there are times when like, it will be very uncomfortable for us to be in certain settings. And this was something else that I wanted to touch on, was that like, I don't like the idea of shaming people for not enjoying being on their own. Like, you don't have to be on your own. Some people are naturally extroverted and love being around people and engaging with people a lot of the time and love being in crowded places. You know, others like myself, I love the buzz of places and I love being around people, but I can also find it draining at times, and I also then need time on my own. I love having time to myself, spending time just in quiet, writing, watching movies, having, you know, just time to myself to wind down. But I think people can become hyper independent, and some people struggle then to rely on others or ask them for help, and I don't think that's great either. And I've fallen on that side of the spectrum before, of like, you know, feeling like, oh, I should be able to do everything on my own, and then wondering why I was falling apart. But it's because we do need humans to also help take care of us. And this year, I think that's been one of my biggest lessons, but I'll save that for a podcast I do about my lessons from this year. It's like learning to lean on other people, learning to ask for help, learning that we do need people in our life. We all need love in our life, and self-love is where it all starts, you know. But we also need to give out love and to, you know, lean into relationships with others, even when they feel scary and uncomfortable, and friendships, because we need other people. And even though, like, bringing ourselves out on dates, it should feel exciting, not like we're escaping other people, not like we're scared. And like, it is natural to feel scared doing this when you're not used to it. But as I said, there is the long-term payoff of getting used to it. But if you feel really uncomfortable and really scared, and you have like trauma coming up, like what I just described, sitting in a cinema, leave. You do not need to force yourself to like be like a robot. Please be compassionate and kind to yourself. If something is really just difficult for you, then like, just be proud that you did a bit of it. And it's like what someone said, it's like, if you show up at the gym, you've already won. You know, you could just stay there for 5 minutes and that's enough. You made it there, and that's the big thing. It's the actual going there and the process of going and getting to the place that people normally don't get as far as that. The same goes for if you want to take yourself out on dates. So some of the last few statistics I want to read out is that 40% of people said they'd went into a pub alone, 60% hadn't. That can feel scary at times, you know. And recently, actually, last month, I went to Brezi's Where Is My Mind podcast. I went on my own, because once again, I love his content. I like his podcast, and it was something that I looked forward to. I was like, oh, this will be a nice day to myself in Galway. So I went up for the day. I went out for dinner. I got dressed up. Where was this going? Oh yeah, and I had like an hour to spare. Oh, and my phone died, which is kind of classic me sometimes. I'll just be so like, I don't know, sometimes I forget about charging my phone. Other times I don't, but I just get caught up with different things going on during the day, and sure, look, it happens. And sometimes I get a bit lost in the moment, and then next thing you know, my phone's on 2%. So anyway, I decided I'd go into this pub in Galway, and it's one that always has trad music on. The name's gone from me completely, but it's a lovely, lively pub in the centre on Shop Street. And went in there, phone was dead, and I asked your man behind the bar, could I order a drink? And I couldn't pay because I didn't actually have any cash in my wallet. All I had was my phone. Like, this is another example of how it can be a bit silly at times. I think I left like my cards in my purse at home, or I left my purse in the car. So I was just walking around with my phone, which was it died then. And I was like, what am I doing? Because my ticket to go see Brezzy was also on my phone. Someone listening to this might be like, geez. But I think I spent so much of my life panicking about those situations and like trying to avoid them that it was actually exhausting. You know, always ensuring your phone was charged, always making sure you were there on time, always making sure this and that. of course it's good to like, you know, look after yourself, make sure you get things on time, but it's also okay to take it easy and to allow for complications and things to go wrong, and to see that things will all work out if you're willing to just go outside your comfort zone a bit. So I went into this pub and I decided, you know what, I'll ask your man, can I get a drink and can he charge my phone? And what I'll do is I'll pay him for the drink once my phone is charged. Not a bother. So anyway, there was trad music on. The pub was very lively and it was a lot of people just watching the traditional music players. So that was lovely. It's like going into a place where like people are focused on something can be a lot easier than just going in and sitting at a bar on your own. And, you know, it's all about the reason why you're going to these places, like, you know, but it was nice to go in and watch the music and have one drink. And then when my phone was charged, the bartender was like, oh, thanks so much. You know, he was thanking me for actually paying him with my phone. It was as if he thought, I wonder, is this just her pretending and will she actually pay me? But I was like, of course, like, thank you, you know, because he did me a big favour. And so I had my phone charged and then I was off and on to Bressie. So I was delighted with myself. I guess a big theme that I wanted to point out was how it is okay to want to do things on your own. I, for a long time, thought that it was weird that I liked spending time on my own, and that I loved, you know, hiding in my room watching movies. And now I've kind of come to understand that I'm quite sensitive, and like what I mentioned earlier, I nearly need that time to then be able to do the other things I enjoy. Because there's times where I'm like, oh God, you know, why amn't I out and about doing this or that or this? And it's like, seriously, you can only do so much in a day. You can only do so much in a week. I can only socialise so much. But I need that wind down time, but I also now have learned to enjoy it. So there was a while there, I think I shamed myself for like, why do I like feel like I need to rest? And why do I feel like I need time to myself to reflect and to write? And it's like, well, that's because you love doing these things. And I think if we're always just following what the norm is and what everyone else is doing, how are we ever going to learn what we like to do? Because we're not all robots. And that's the most interesting and fascinating thing about going on a date with someone, is learning about what makes them different and what is it that they like to do. And I think treat yourself in that way too when you're going on dates, when you're dealing with yourself each day, when you wake up with yourself each morning. Like, be curious about yourself and like see your life as a constant journey of like getting to know yourself, and to like see your relationships in that way too, and to really like honor someone and respect someone, and to really honor and respect yourself. It's allowing yourself the freedom to grow and to change and to not be the same as you were yesterday, and to always be curious in how you approach yourself, instead of like criticizing yourself for like being different to how you were 2 weeks ago, or for not being perfect. Like, grant yourself like some more compassion and just take yourself out in the day. Like, you deserve it. And I would love to know like what that looks like for you, whether it's going out dancing, whether it's going to a yoga class, whether it is getting dressed up. I had like a few people mention, oh geez, I forgot to read these out. The podcast is about to end, but sure, look, I'll just read them out when I have time. I had people mention that they went camping on their own and they were really scared, but it was definitely mixed with excitement. And someone else said that they would like to go to the cinema on their own, but they're scared. Someone else said that they find it very daunting to join group things where you're actively sharing. So they'd find like yoga or breath work easier because you don't have to speak. Completely get that. It's all about going to more of them. My first women's circle, I was like, what is going on? I spent more time thinking in my head than actually listening and talking and sharing what was going on in my head. But the more you go to them, the more you kind of get comfortable. And there's times where like you won't want to share, and it's realizing that you don't have to share. No one expects you to fill the silence. So remember, your job is not to fill the silence, it's showing up. That is your number one job. Even if you don't talk, whatever it is that you're going to, whether it's kayaking, whether it's a date, meeting someone new, you do not have to entertain them. You're going there and showing up as you is the one thing you have to do. And that's like just knowing that you're doing the best you can with what you know, and you're constantly learning and growing. But the only way you will learn and grow is through trying and allowing yourself to try and step outside your comfort zone. So another person said that they love spending time on their own. I always feel so free in my own bubble and empowered after it. Which is just really lovely. I just wanted to share some of those because I think it's nice hearing, other people's fears. I feel like now I'm getting very tired. It's late at night. I've had a long day of rock climbing, and I'm really hoping that I did this topic justice. Because even though it might sound very serious with all the tips and all the inspirational speeches, taking yourself out on a date should be fun. Waking up to yourself each day should be fun. It's not always going to feel fun, so I don't want it to seem toxic positivity. I've talked about this in podcasts. There are times where I have struggled to get out of bed. That's all a part of sometimes learning to get to know yourself and growing and healing and becoming a person that's feels very different to the person you were a year ago. But as I said, like sometimes the short-term discomforts, and sometimes we have to take like 2 steps back to then take a step forward. And just remember that if you do go to something and you're like, geez, that went awful, I never want to go again, just think about what it was that made it awful. Sometimes we do need to trust our gut, but other times it might just be us like actually going into that experience with a closed mind, filled with fear, and not really being in the moment and being open to seeing what's good about it rather than pointing out all of what's bad about it, because our minds will always try to find what's wrong instead of what's right. That is all from me today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, please share on A Good Kind of Scary if you found today's podcast useful, if it has inspired you to want to go out with yourself, if you've already booked a trip away or anything like that. I want to hear about all of it. And remember, solo dates don't have to be in another country. They can just be walking outside to your back garden, boiling the kettle and then sipping your morning coffee as you listen to the birds. If you are as lucky as me to be able to say that I can hear the birds in the morning. Okay, that is all from me. Have a very beautiful day, evening, week, wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you're doing. Just keep being you. Thank you.